The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, Senior Commander-in-Chief Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Trying to get settled in here, man. All kinds of discombobulated. Crazy weekend. And not all of it good. But yet, here we are on the eve of the start of training camp. All players are officially in the building now. Veterans showed up today. And as I like to say this time of the year, as we get knocking on that door of training camp, once again, it's on. It's about to get on and popping. And pads about to be popping here shortly. Obviously, we won't get the padded practices probably for another week or so as they get ramped up and kind of get themselves into physical contact shape. But boy, I've been seeing posts from other teams who have been in camp for a few days now, and the juices are flowing, right? And the excitement is starting to build. Players are getting into camp. Some guys are holding out, wanting their money. So that means it's time, right? When we start having real deadlines hit and real action being taken, now we're talking ball, right? When Jordan Love says, hey, I'm showing up, but I ain't practicing, it's time, right? So now we getting put on the NFI list. It's time, right? So it feels good. Feels good to finally be where we are now talking about actual ball. And we'll be covering as much of it as we can here on the Louie T Network, and you'll be getting it just about everywhere. Everybody's going to have something to say, and I'll give you my 2 cents, and we'll document everything along this journey. Today we heard from both the head coach DQ and the general manager Chef P. We'll talk about what those two had to say, the standout moments of their press conference, and we'll go through that with a fine-tooth comb. I also want to talk about one other topic tonight before we get out of here. This won't be a very long episode unless you guys make it that way. I think Washington is I can't say that we're the biggest wild card this season, but I do think we are one of the biggest wild card teams this season, because you have absolutely no idea what to expect from Washington. There's no consensus. There's people that think we're going to absolutely stink. There are people who think, look out for Washington. I think that's a playoff team, that we could be the Houston Texans from last year. And there's a bunch of opinions in between. And I think that should be enough to tell you that nobody has a clue on this team. And that's a good thing. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on in the show. I'll expound upon that. But I want to first dive in with the press conference that we had today with Chef P, our general manager, and DQ, our head coach. And again, that's the calm before the storm presser. And we'll be hearing from DQ almost every day, right? We'll be hearing from him just about every day after practice or so, or some days before practice. But we won't be hearing from Adam Peters for a while. So unless something major goes down, we won't be hearing from Adam Peters probably until we start talking maybe 53-man roster, and that might be more of a DQ thing. It's been so long since we've had a general manager that I can't even tell you when is the next time we'll hear from him, because we technically had Martin Mayhew, but Ronald Rivera was making all the real decisions around here. So I think this is the last time we'll hear from Chef P for a good minute. So let's dive into what was said today. So obviously, they started off the press conference kind of giving you a quick tone setter for what they expect, how they're going to approach training camp, yada, yada, yada. And then the first question that was lobbed at them from John Keim. And John stayed true to his form. When I had him here on the summer series, I asked him what was the biggest thing he was going to be focused in on at camp. And he said, quarterback. And he was so excited, his mic went out in my ear. I couldn't hear him. So I'm just sitting there looking like a deer caught in headlights. Like, when they kick it to the person out at the scene and it takes them like an extra 3 to 5 seconds on a delay, and they're just sitting there. Hey, that's how I was staring when I asked him, and he had already said quarterback, but he said it so loud, it's like his mic distorted. Then he said it again, quarterback. He asked a question about Jaden Daniels and what the approach was going to be for Jaden Daniels heading into camp. They're not going to just anoint him as QB1, as we all know, and which is fine. And I'm glad they're not doing that. We've seen that whole thing not be very fruitful here in Washington multiple times over. And so, he's a guy that I think is going to do everything that he needs to do to earn the job. But if you're going to preach competition, then it should apply to everyone, including the number 2 overall pick. And so I think it sets a good precedence. And, I love the response from DQ. He said, look, it's not a secret what's going on here. Like, everybody knows what the ultimate goal is and what we're trying to accomplish. Like, we're not sitting here trying to act like this is a real competition between he and Marcus Mariota. Like, if Jaden comes in and does all the things that he's shown us throughout the offseason, this guy is going to be our starting quarterback. This is why we drafted him number 2 overall to play. So it's not a secret that we're trying to get this guy on track to be our starting quarterback. But it is a journey and it is a process. And we'll know when we know, and he'll know when he knows, and the team will know when they know, right? Everybody will see it, and they'll know, and that's when we'll move forward with him as the number 1 guy. And so that was DQ's answer. And the latter part about, we'll know when we know, he'll know when he knows, and the team will know when they know, was from Chef P, right? So essentially they're saying, look, bro, everybody here knows what's going on. The team knows what's going on. Marcus Mariota knows. Everybody knows. Now it's about getting to that point, putting in the work, doing the things necessary, showing the growth, right? Taking lessons learned, good and bad, from each day's practice, from each day's film session, getting working in the weight room, in the film room, using the things that you've been taught on the practice field. So taking things that you learned in the film room and applying them to the field, showing that growth and that maturation, and getting to a place where you can successfully run this football team and do it without the training wheels being on, right? So love that answer. We know it's a process, and eventually he'll be named the starter. But until then, you just go about the process and continuing handling business until we get to that point. This is a question that I've asked almost everyone. I've asked you guys this, right? And this is one of the questions I wonder about, which is why I've asked you, and I've asked John Keim, and I've asked Logan Paulson, and I've asked Craig Hoffman. What is your definition of a successful season? So that was the question that was asked to Dan Quinn. And I, again, loved the answer, right? It wasn't too many things that they said where I went, normally when we get one of these pressers, there's 1 or 2 questions, maybe 3 or 4 where we go, what? Okay, whatever. Like, okay, cool. You just roll with it, right? But you're like, that was a funky answer. Not really none of those, right? You know what else I realized over the offseason, but really today in particular, DQ is a master sidestepper. Boy, he is clever. He is well schooled in the art of sidestepping a question that he doesn't want to answer without telling you. Like Ron wasn't shrewd enough to sidestep in a question that he didn't want to answer without either telling you I'm not answering that. He just flat out, which is fine, flat out telling you I'm not going to answer that. Or he would start off by not wanting to answer it and then talk so goddamn much he'd end up answering the shit, right? He wasn't shrewd enough to talk for so long that you forget the damn question that you asked because he's now talking about some other shit that has nothing to do with the question that you asked him, but he's done it in such a tactful way that you take the answer, right? That's what you should be able to do as an NFL head coach, is to talk to someone and have them ask a question that you totally don't want to answer. And it's not maybe because the question itself is a bad question, but the answer to the question may be an answer that might upset some, and you don't want to put those players in that position. So, for instance, they asked about position groups maybe being behind or ahead. What's your strongest position group was another question that was asked. How am I supposed to answer that? So am I really going to tell you, well, yeah, I think right now our defensive line is the best group on the team, or our safeties is an extraordinary group. We feel really good about them. No, dum-dums like Ronald Rivera might have answered that question. And I don't mean to call him a dum-dum, but he would have answered that. Yeah, we feel really good about our defensive line. Yeah, no. I don't want to tell you that I feel better about one position group than another on the team. Nobody needs to feel like they've arrived. No one needs to feel like they're better than the rest of the team. Everybody's on the same playing field. Yeah, internally, we've discussed this and we know what we feel really good about, but I'm not going to tell you that, right? So I think that's how this group is wired. When you get Joe Witt Jr. saying, look, I'm not giving you any competitive advantage, and he's telling you that in May, you got something good on your hands, right? So when they ask you about, the most developed group or the best position group on the team, and he starts talking about how to coach up players and get the most out of them, I said, you damn Dan Quinn, you. I see what you just did there. I like it. I like it a lot. So the definition of a successful season, I thought he didn't talk about wins and losses. He didn't even talk about, establishing this or that. What he talked about was establishing an identity. That's like Christmas music to my ears in late November, right? Into early December. Like, that is just beautiful to these ears, right? Because what have I talked about? Looking to establish for this organization for years, right? All I've talked about at times, it probably sounded like a broken record, was having some sort of identity. Being able to establish some sort of consistency, something you can hang your hat on week in and week out, which we just have never really had. And he said that the definition of a successful season is establishing an identity, speed, physicality, and winning football at critical times. See how we play and feel how we play was what Dan Chef P added, right? He said, and he said that at his introductory press conference, if you recall, he said, one thing you're going to do is we're going to play hard, and, you're going to see it on the field. You're going to see how hard we play, and teams that play against us are going to feel how hard we play. So I think for them, establishing who we are, win or lose, there needs to be a way that we play. And I think as most fans, after watching, especially what we saw last year, because even the first 3 years of Rivera, we might have been disappointed and pissed off at how seasons ended, especially 2022 in particular, because we should have made the playoffs that year. But there weren't many seasons prior to last year where you felt like this empty feeling of just, what the hell did I just watch? Like, that was embarrassing. Like, there was no effort, there was no life, there was no fight. What was that? Like, I can't get behind that shit. Can't get jiggy with this shit. Can't get behind that product. What am I doing here? Right? What are they doing? And what are you asking me to sign up for? Because this is trash. Last year was bad. And so the first thing that Adam Peters came in and said was, we're going to compete. There will be effort that you'll be able to see on your television screen, or if you're in person at the game in attendance, you'll see it, you'll feel it, it'll permeate the building, and you'll know these guys are out there busting their ass. Now, whether we get the dub or not, can't say, but at least you know they went out there and they emptied the tank. Can't really say that was the case last year, or at least it didn't appear to be at times. It was bad. So establishing an identity is the thing that they feel like will establish a successful season, is understanding what Commanders football looks like, what a Commanders player looks like. These are all things that get me excited and get the juices flowing for me. And talking about playing winning football at critical times, how many games during the Rivera era did we lose in critical moments? And there could have been a lot more. We got lucky. You know, the Giants game with the offsides by Dexter Lawrence, like, that's a loss without that offsides, right? The game against the Raiders that we won, like, what was it, 17-15 or whatever the hell it was, dropped interception right in the hands of a Raiders defensive back. Don't drop that pick. That might even be a pick six. Forget about the game just being over just because of a pick. It might have been a pick six to end the game from Heineke. Instead, he drops it. We end up going down the field and kicking the game-winning field goal, right? Like, we got away in a number of games that we easily could have lost, probably should have lost, right? But we lost a lot of games. We should have lost that Colts game, right? Even after the comeback, defense should have given up a field goal attempt at a bare minimum, should have given up a field goal attempt. But we won a bunch of games that we lost a bunch of games that we probably should have won too, right? Because of poor execution. We didn't win games that didn't come down to the wire, but we just didn't win against opponents that we should have beat. Like Tennessee, for instance. They had no business beating us because we just weren't prepared well enough. The Bears game last year, it's another great example. You know, winning decisions at critical times, playing winning football, going for two against the Eagles is what we should have done. Analytics, if we really truly had an analytics department and not Ronald making unilateral decisions and then blaming it on the analytics department, making up stories and making up bullshit afterwards, we would have gone for two against the Eagles in week 4 last year. There would not have been this, oh no, analytics said you kick the extra point there and you go to overtime. No, it doesn't. It doesn't say that, especially when you play 4 days later on Thursday Night Football. That's not what the analytics say. So I love the fact that he's talking about establishing identity and playing winning football at critical moments. Not being able to convert a 2-point conversion essentially against Tennessee a couple of years ago because we couldn't score from 2 yards out from the end zone, right? That was us. So situational football is going to be key, and for a long time, especially with Scott Turner, my favorite line was, situationally, our guys are unaware, right? Like, situational football escapes us because situationally, our coaches are unaware. And that was Eric Bieniemy as well, unfortunately, last year. Very unaware of the situation. Too often, as a matter of fact. Additions. taking things off of DQ and Chef P's plate. So Adam Peters made it a point of emphasis to talk about taking, like, so someone had asked about some of the additions made to the organization. And I don't think Chef P has really talked about a lot of those additions. Well, the last time we might have heard from him, it might have been, draft night, day 2 of draft night. I don't think he spoke after the third day. I think he let his assistant GM speak on the third day of the draft. So he never really addressed all of the moves that have been made. And I'm surprised no one asked about Jason Wright. Nobody asked about the kicker. I thought some of the questions were redundant. I didn't think this was a great, press conference from a question standpoint, because I thought there were other questions that could have been asked that would have made more sense. Like, what y'all doing at kicker? Like, I know y'all talked about this before, but, is this, is Hamed gonna be like the kicker until otherwise notified? Is that what we're doing, or what's going on here with that? I thought they could have asked some questions like that, but it is what it is. I do think that it's important to know that they continued to build the front office, adding guys in here, and Chef P said those guys have taken things off of our plate. And the reason why I think that's important to mention is because when Dan Quinn was introduced here as the head coach in his introductory presser, he talked about delegating and not doing a good enough job of that in Atlanta. And if you remember the interview I had with Bueller from Fansided, he talked about Dan Quinn kind of taking on too many responsibilities in his first go round, and how that kind of affected the product on the field. And Quinn himself talked about that. And he said this time around, he wanted to, really have the right support staff around him and let people do their jobs, essentially. So somewhere I was watching something somewhere, and they were like, Dan Quinn, you know what it was? It was KJ Wright was on somebody's program when Quinn first got the job here. And he told Quinn, whatever you do, don't let somebody else call the defense. You call the defense. Sort of like D'Amico Ryans did in Houston. Quinn's not doing that, obviously, but I think it just goes to show that as they continue to hire all of these different people in these various roles, Quinn wants as much pressure. Same with Adam Peters, too. They want as much pressure off of them, which will free them up to be the best versions of themselves so that they can lead this organization and franchise in the best way possible, that allows them the freedom to be in a lot of places at once, to be a little bit more ubiquitous, if that makes sense. And I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on with all of the different hires that have been made, and all of the different support staff that they have. We have a pretty robust organization now. Like, before, there wasn't a huge cabinet of guys, right? Literally, we could probably, the scouting department, you had the director of college scouting, you had the director of pro personnel, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you had all of that stuff still, right? That was Scott Polian, and we had or was it David Polian? Whatever. It was Polian's son, whatever his first name was. But Polian was the pro side, I forgot the bald-headed black dude. He was on the college side. None of those guys are here, by the way. Now they've all been replaced. But in the front office, it was really just Ron, Martin Mayhew, and Marty Herney. That was pretty much it. Man, it's like stacked now. So it's a guy here for every job title, every description known to mankind. Like, nobody's being overworked is essentially what I'm getting at, including the head coach and the general manager. So, approach to training camp. They asked him about his approach to training camp. And, do you want physical play? Do you want the pads thumping? Yada, yada, yada. And DQ's answer was, it's a good one, right? But it wasn't the answer itself. It was what it sparked in my mind and what it reminded me of. I'm going to bring it up in a second. So he had an analogy to sparring. If you're a boxing fan, you know what sparring is. You're preparing for a fight. You're training against another fighter of the same weight class that you're about to take on. You try to emulate a lot of the different things that you're going to see, but all in all, you're in the ring and you're trying to get in some really good work, right? You're not trying to kill the guy that you're fighting against in your sparring session, though. Understanding that this is not a real fight, you're practicing, right? So you want to push yourself, but you don't want to go too far that something happens that shouldn't happen, right? Same thing here, So what it reminded me of, though, was it took me back to last training camp. And it made me think of the Terry McLaurin situation. You guys remember that from last year? And what's crazy is when something happens in the moment, I don't think you realize, especially when you're excited about something, you try to rationalize it and you make up excuses or you make up things as to why it happened, and you make yourself feel better about it by explaining it away, right? But when you look back on a situation after it doesn't work and you look at all the red flags and all of the warning signs there, you go, man, it was all there. We just ignored it, right? Another case in point last year in training camp, Terry McLaurin, if you remember, got into a little bit of a spat with Benjamin St. Juice. Remember, Benjamin St. Juice had a big hit on one of the tight ends. Terry felt like it was uncalled for. Hey, we don't do that to our teammates. He stood over him after he did it too. So, adding a little, salt in the wound, insult to injury. Terry stood up for his guy, pushed St. Juice and got in his face. And Eric Bieniemy comes over and he's yelling at Terry, get your ass back in the huddle, this, that. And Terry's like, we don't do that to teammates. And Eric Bieniemy, you ain't trying to hear that shit. Get your ass back in the goddamn huddle. And Terry was right? You take care of your teammates. You don't do that to your teammates, right? Eric Bieniemy was wrong in not standing up for Terry, but more importantly, standing up for, I think it was Cole Turner, one of those tight ends, it was one of those younger tight ends who got blasted on the play. And instead of him saying, hey, I like that aggression, save that for when it's a different color helmet, right? Don't do that to our guys. Instead of Eric Bieniemy stepping in and saying that shit, he's calling out Terry and telling him to get back in the huddle on some bullshit. But it just reminded me when he says, hey, we're sparring and we want to push each other and we want to get better, but we don't want to cross that line. That's kind of what Terry was talking about last year. So anyway, just made me think about it when he talked about sparring and that line, you want to go up to it as close as you can, but you don't want to cross it. He was asked about, will any position groups be behind the rest of the team, when it comes to, the 2023 season? And he said, yes, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the team. When it comes to the 2023 season, I think it will be behind the rest of the te because of, to start training camp as you get into the season, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, yeah, the line of scrimmage, essentially. And that's an easy answer, right? So later on, he was asked, well, is there any position group that's going to be ahead or that is ahead, or do you feel better about? And he deflected that because now you're insinuating that there's a group of players on the team that's better than everybody else. Let us talk about that shit. You as the coaches don't need to do that. We'll do that for you, right? Let our imagination run wild. But when you talk about position groups that may be behind, it's easy to say the offensive and defensive lines in the trenches, they haven't had pads on, right? And in order for them to get the type of work that is going to allow them to get better, iron sharpening iron, in order for that to take place, pads need to be inserted into the equation. You don't have pads on the entire offseason, and you're not going to have pads on for the first week and a half of training camp. The pads will not be inserted here until we either get to the late stages of July, like we're in the latter stages of July now, but I'm talking 29th, 30th, 31st, or August, right, is when the pads finally get inserted into the equation. So you're still talking about a little while longer without pads. And so it's still going to take the offensive and defensive line. Meanwhile, the wide receivers, the corners, the safeties, the running back, they still can get all of the work that they would normally get. Maybe not the running backs as much, but they can still get a lot of the work that they would get in normally with or without pads, which is why the offseason really benefits them. Quarterback, all of that, can still get a lot of the same work that they would have gotten, regardless if pads are on or not. But obviously, the in the trenches is where it'll be felt the most, or lack thereof. So he talked about that's league wide, though. That's just not our team. With with the new CBA and the way the things are set up now, not as many padded practices. Offensive and defensive line, they're the ones that usually come along the slowest because of that. Makes a lot of sense. He was asked about the superpower of his staff. They didn't phrase it that way, but he loves to talk about superpowers. And I love the fact that he loves to talk about superpowers. But they asked, what's going to be the best feature of your coaching staff? And he's like, their ability to teach. And he said teaching is going to be key. And it just made me think about the lack of teaching here in Washington for the last 4 years under Rivera. It was horrible, right? We had no coaches that were held in high regard around the league in Washington for the last 4 years. And I don't ever feel like our guys progressed after being drafted here or after being signed here as a free agent. It was rare that somebody came here from somewhere else and got better. It was rare that somebody came here from the draft, from college, and got better. It felt like a lot of spinning wheels in place or guys regressing. It didn't feel like there was a lot of growth that took place with a lot of players here. And that's coaching. Whether you can call it scheme, fit. I thought that there were some teams or position groups in particular that I thought had a ton of talent that if Dan Quinn had been here, Montez Sweat and Chase Young are probably still here. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe you can't pay all 4 defensive linemen. They had already paid Sweat or Allen and Payne. Maybe you couldn't pay both of those edge rushers, and you wouldn't have had to pay Chase Young yet. Anyway, you would have picked up his 5th-year option had he played well, but that's nor here nor there. They had talent is all I'm trying to suggest. And the fact that they couldn't get it out of them speaks volumes about the staff that was here before. If Emmanuel Forbes plays well this year, look, we could call it scheme, and that's fine. And if that's how you want to address it, and that's going to help him a lot. Scheme, fits matter, right? But they didn't coach him well. They shitted on that kid at the first sight of trouble. They threw him out there in some tough situations. They put him in bad spots. And then when he didn't perform well in those tough spots that they put him in, they shit on the kid and made him feel like he was the reason why he wasn't playing well. And look, I'm not saying that, excuse me, that he didn't do enough himself and that he didn't put himself in some bad situations from a technique standpoint. But all in all, they didn't build up his confidence. You know, he was poorly coached. That entire secondary was poorly coached. That's why we gave up so many big plays, big runs, big catches, etc. We were poorly coached. So teaching, he said, DQ said, is going to be the superpower of his staff. But it's not just, you know, the rookies going to second year guys getting better or the rookies coming in here and coaching them up. He's like the fifth year player going, you know, into year six, the player going into year six, you know, that guy needs to be coached up just as much. And we need to see improvement from him too, i.e. Terry McLaurin, right? Like, we don't need to just see improvement from Luke McCaffrey. We need to see it from Terry McLaurin as well, right? Not just our rookies, but our best player at that position needs to be getting better. And that's across the board. So I love that answer too, because you can always be getting better. You know, even Bobby Wagner at his age can be working on something and get better, because he's at a point of his career where there's some new norms that he has to establish now. Not the same Bobby Wagner he was 5 years ago. Can't do a lot of the things he could do 5-7 years ago. So now he's going to have to figure out ways to get the job done, doing it a little bit differently. So yeah, he can still learn and grow and become a better version of this edition of Bobby Wagner, right? So love that, right? So JP Finley tried to sneak in Brandon Ayuk still photo on TikTok question, and Adam Peters shut that shit down with the swiftness, right? don't be bringing that weak stuff in here, okay? Don't be bringing that weak shit in here, right? First of all, he was like, he didn't have practice footage. He said, okay, a still photo. Yeah, all right, he had a still photo. He said, we took care of that internally, handled that situation, it's done. Oh, okay, I'm not getting no more? Nah, it's done. So move on, right? So I love the fact that they shut that shit down. JP just moved on. He's a professional. He gets it. He just moved on to the next question, right? I ain't even go, because if they were in a different media market, New York, for instance, come on, bro. They won't let that shit go off of just one question. They would have kept pressing. But I ain't mad at it. I ain't mad at it at all. I'm glad JP had the balls to even ask, because I think they felt like they were going to have to address that a little bit sooner, because once the question came up, DQ looked at AP, and AP looked at him, and DQ said, "You want to take this one?" And he was like, "Yeah, I got it." So they had talked about it beforehand. Like, hey, they're gonna ask us about this. You want to take it, or you want me to take it? So Adam Peters was asked, why are you confident in Cornelius Lucas at left tackle if that is in fact the direction the organization has to go this season? Remember, he was talking that confidence and Corn Luke shit back in early April, late March. I think we were at the owners' meetings in Orlando. And so I think those are in, that shit might be in March. It's got to be March. So he was talking that cold hard cash about Cole Luke in March. Like, yo, if we got it, and remember, we was like, bruh, stop playing with us. Stop. Why is you lying? Why is you lying? Like, come on, man. You really think we supposed to believe you feel good about what we got at tackle right now? Yeah, right. He was dead ass. I mean, he did draft Brandon Coleman, but he was dead ass. He's like, y'all know we feel good about what we got. And Cornelius Lucas, I've said this, and I think a lot of you said that I can't speak for you. I speak for myself. I told you I'd be fine with Corn Luke starting at tackle if he had to. The only thing is I can't be certain that he's gonna last for 17 games, and the consistency will be great through 17 weeks. We've never seen that. He's never been asked to do that here in Washington. But we know in spot duty, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, he can hold it down. I think that's the same thing we're saying right now about Nick Allegretti, right? We don't know Nick like that. But Chiefs fans are like, yeah, he's a good dude, man. We trust Nick. But they only trusted Nick for spot duty, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks at a time. Nick will step in, play good football. But do you know that Nick is going to play well for 17 weeks? You can't say that. We've never asked him to do that. Same with Cornelius Lucas here. But he's like, the tape was good, right? We talked to the staff that was here before we got here, and they had nothing but good things to say about Corn Luke. We had him this offseason. He was outstanding. The dude is one of the, really good pass blockers in the league, which I don't think any of us. I mean, Logan Paulson had him on the show. He literally said, from a pass blocking perspective, Cornelius Lucas is fine. Do you really want to live in a world where you're asking Corn Lucas to get out there on, run plays where you're asking him to be the lead, blocker on a pull to get out front and be running 10, 15 yards down the field? Nah, that's not the world you're trying to live in, right? So that's the question is, can he adjust and adapt to some of the things they may ask him to do? But he's like, yo, we real comfortable with him. So, okay. Johnny Newton starting the season on the NFI list. That's not a surprise to anybody that's been paying attention this offseason. When he had to have the foot surgery on the other foot, excuse me, I think that should have told anybody out there that had been paying attention all they needed to know about the trajectory of him being ready for camp. Was almost 0% at that point. I do think, and remember, we did the math, right, on the timetable of where it should put him, and we came up with somewhere in early to mid-August is when he should be back off of the list, activated, and back practicing, right? Will he play in the preseason? If that timetable holds true, the one that we came up with, I don't know what his timetable is. I don't know what their timetable is. And the answer that he gave us, and then we'll get back to this timetable that we talked about before when we first heard the news. Johnny's doing well with his rehab. This was Adam Peters. We had to hold him back, but we are pleased with his progress. Johnny's an animal, and he's been getting after it. It'll be sooner rather than later that we'll release the reins. Excuse me. But we don't play any games. Excuse me. Anytime soon. So not really worried or concerned. So damn, my throat itchy. Hold on, let me get some water. Whew. Throat was itching like hell. I was trying to scratch it without having to stop, but I couldn't do it. it makes all the sense in the world that he's on the NFI list. The timetable that we had come up with, I think it was somewhere like August 10th through the 14th, somewhere in there. If everything went according to plan, with the timetable that lined up with when he had the surgery and what the recovery time for that type of surgery is. And if that's the case, that would put you right around preseason game number 2, which he wouldn't be playing in. Would you be comfortable putting him out there in the 3rd preseason game, having only practice for maybe 5 or 6 practices prior to the preseason the 3rd and final preseason game? Maybe you'd feel comfortable putting him out there. Maybe you wouldn't. My guess is you'd love to get him out there for at least a preseason game and then have him ready for the start of the season. Does he have to play in a preseason game to be ready for the start? No, he doesn't. That's not a prerequisite. So I'll say this. He said sooner rather than later. If that's true, if we hold him to his word on sooner rather than later, then I'm going to go with early August. So we're talking somewhere in that August 2nd to 6th range when he comes back, and that'll put him in striking range to be ready to play in, if not the first preseason game, definitely the second one, right? So we'll see about that. We'll keep tabs on him because he is going to be a guy that is going to be a huge part of what they do defensively. So yeah, we got stuff at defensive tackle, but you can never have enough of it, especially when you don't have any elite edge rushers. You need all your stuff. Excuse me. Another question that was lobbed at them. How do you know what you are looking how do you know, and what are you looking for in terms of identity? How do you know when the identity has been established? And Dan Quinn's answer was outstanding here. He was like, look, while playing really fast, you need excellent execution. I started like, wait, we on some Bret Hart shit? Excellence to execution? He said, execution and speed over and over again. He's like, you don't get to pick and choose when you play fast. We play fast on every single snap. And the ability to be able to execute at a high level while playing at maximum speed is what we're after. And when we start seeing that on a consistent basis, then we've achieved our identity. Because we're going to play fast, we're going to play physical, but in doing so, we need to be able to play smart. Fundamentally sound, mistake-free football. If we can do those things while playing fast and executing, that's going to be our identity. So it reminded me of that Dorrance Armstrong quote from earlier in the offseason that I kept talking about over and over again. And every time I talk to somebody, I bring it up when we start talking about Dan Quinn and his defenses and how fast they play. Because Dorrance Armstrong, I thought, had one of the better quotes from a player this offseason in talking about Coach Quinn. And he said, the way we play defensively is not normal. It's not easy, and everybody's not built to do it, which tied into another quote from Joe Witt Jr., which was, this ain't for everybody. Everybody ain't wired to do what it is we do here. And that's okay. You don't want players here that aren't wired to do the things that we are going to ask them to do. And not everybody's built to do the things that we're going to ask them to do. And Dorrance Armstrong is like, it takes a special type of player to play in the Dan Quinn coach defense, and with Joe Witt, because It ain't easy. It's very demanding, and you got to put in the work, and you got to be willing to put in the effort. And it's hard. If it was easy, everybody be doing it. Everybody defense don't look like this. And I said, you know what, Dorrance? You spot on, bro. Because everybody defense don't look like Dan Quinn's. Everybody ain't out here producing the most turnovers year after year in the NFL defensively like Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr.'s units are. So you know what? Yeah, you are right. It don't look the same. And listening to him talk about that identity and how you establish it, and he said you're gonna see that out here. And it reminded me of a story that one of the stories John, who was it? Was it Kime? I think it was Kime. Excuse me. Who told a story? It might have been Kime or it might have been Craig Hoffman, who told a story about Dan Quinn going over to the Stanford wide receiver. Forgot his name, but they were doing a drill, running a play or something in practice, and he didn't do it at the kind of tempo that they wanted. So he's off on the side, chilling, thinking, yeah, I just went out and got these reps in. And Quinn comes over to him and is like, hey, that ain't how we do, that ain't how we conduct business around here. And didn't embarrass him in front of the team, didn't just put him off to the side. Hey, that ain't good enough. That ain't how we do things here. We got a level of intensity that we play with. And, you want to be a part of this team, you have to step that shit up, essentially. So I think that identity is going to be a big thing. Those are culture changers, game changers, if you will. Then he asked, how can joint practices help? There was a question at the very end about joint practices and how they can help, which we kind of know the value in joint practices, but DQ got into some specifics. And then I thought the most interesting answer came from Chef P. So Quinn talked about essentially getting new looks and new things thrown at you, right? Because we've heard this over and over again. You get into the dog days of summer, you're tired of hitting on your teammates. You start to learn tendencies, the defense that they're running, you've been playing up against a guy for 2.5 weeks. So you start to learn his tendencies. This is how he comes off the line. When he's about to get out of his break, this is what it looks like. Yada, yada, yada. This is what his split looks like when he's trying to run a route that's breaking this way or when he's doing that. So you start to become accustomed to some of the tells, and you start getting comfortable with tendencies. So, playing against a different team where you don't know their tendencies, where they're giving you a different look, they're not running the same plays, different releases, different things that you have to adjust and adapt to. It makes a ton of sense, right? Like it's not new news to anybody. But the evaluation part from Adam Peters was interesting. So he talked about not wanting to look at just our players for evaluation purposes, but the other team's players as well in that practice setting. Because he's like, look, we got the number 2 waiver wire claim. And I was like, shit, I didn't even think about that. So, normally when a player gets released, he's got to go through waivers if he's a veteran. If you want this player, you put in a waiver claim, what's called a waiver claim. how these are awarded is they go in order of the draft. So essentially, if the Carolina Panthers don't want this player, Washington has essentially first dibs on him. The Panthers have had the worst record in football last year. So any player that is released, they have first dibs. They get to say if they want them or not. If they like, nah, we good. Washington then has the next say so, right? That's a great place to be in if you're trying to acquire talent. So, a team could cut their 6th or 7th round pick. We're going up against the Dolphins in joint practices, and we're watching one of their late round draft picks run around and do some things. You're like, damn, that dude's really impressive. Then you see him again in the game and he kills it. But the Dolphins are stacked and loaded. They don't need another one of those guys at that particular position. So they cut him, but they're thinking they're going to be able to get him back on their practice squad. And Adam Peters is like, no, the hell you're not. They put in that claim and they snatch his ass up. I didn't think about that portion of it. I just thought about it from, you get a chance to evaluate your players against a different team. Situational football, obviously, you can script how you go about practice. So yeah, I want to get some red zone work in. I want to get some work in on the goal line, defensively and offensively. I want to get some 2-minute drill work in, right? So these are things you can script, and you can get these reps in against a live opponent that's not your own. That's a huge part of the value of joint practices. But he also said it's a great look at players with a lower risk of them getting hurt. And I get that aspect of it as well. But anytime you're simulating or playing football, there's an inherent risk that comes with it. So while it's not an actual game where guys are out letting loose and flying around because they're actually putting tape out there for everybody to see, not just practice tape for 2 teams to watch, you still out there busting your ass at practice, and anything can happen. They're not out there trying to kill each other at practice, obviously. You're not out here trying to, decapitate anybody. Decapitate anybody, but you're not out there flying around like you would in a game setting, even if it's preseason. If I'm, the 4th tight end, I'm flying around. I'm trying to make the team, So thought that was an interesting answer as well. And that kind of wrapped up the presser. So, excuse me. We'll be hearing from DQ probably tomorrow after practice. First day of practice, he'll be back out there again. So, excuse me. We'll be hearing from him. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this camp shakes out. And I want to go back to one of the original points that I made at the beginning of the show when I talked about Washington being one of the biggest wild cards. This season. So Washington is one of those teams where they're all over the map. There is no consensus, as I mentioned, when it comes to Washington. Either you think they're going to be really good, and there are a lot of fans within the fan base that think they're going to be really good. I haven't encountered many fans that think we're going to be really bad like we were last year. But I do think there are a number of fans out there, myself included, that feel like this is going to be a middle-of-the-road team. 6 wins is the floor, but it's more of a 7-win, maybe 8 if the ball bounces our way type win team. Anything above 7 or 8 wins, and you've had a much more successful season than I bargained for. Can't speak for any of you out there. Anything north of 500, because if you win 9 games, then you're above 500. This team is overachieved in my estimation. I'm not going into this season expecting, 9 or 10 wins like I have the past couple of seasons, blindly hoping that we catch lightning in a bottle. Not knowing how it was going to happen, but just hoping that it was going to happen, right? Banking on, falsehoods from the year prior that led me to believe that, hey, we can build on this from the year before. And now we've added a quarterback, whether it was Carson Wentz or Sam Howell. We could do this. Shut up. We ain't doing nothing. But here's the interesting thing this year is while we play a pretty damn tough schedule, you play in one of the toughest divisions in football in the NFC East, and you're playing against arguably the toughest division in football in the AFC North. So right then and there, this ain't like a couple of years ago where I was like, yo, we playing against the NFC South or NFC North, which at the time, the Lions weren't that good yet. The Bears were trash. The Packers, you probably didn't think you were going to beat them. We actually did beat them. And then the Vikings, we thought they were beatable, and they turned out to be one of the best teams in football that year. So, and then we were playing the AFC South, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Houston, and they all sucked. Okay. And I was like, if you're serious about making the playoffs, you need to go no worse than 6-2 against those two divisions combined. Of course, we dropped the ball. We were the only team in the division not to go 6-2 or better against those teams. And thus, that's why you keep doing that. Hold on a second. Let me get my plug. All right. There we go. All right. Now we cooking. I was like, why do you keep doing that? All right. So when I look at this upcoming season, there are people that think that this team could be the Houston Texans from last year. I don't. And I hate that notion. I hate that that's a conversation. I don't like it because I think it gives people false hope. And it's nothing wrong with being hopeful that this team turns into that. I hope they turn into that. And I want to be wrong. And I hope that, Jaden Daniels is the second coming of CJ Stroud in terms of the season that he turns in, because he's a different player than CJ Stroud. So, he would be doing it in a much more dynamic way, using his legs as well. But just being the playmaker and leading his team to victories and things of that nature, you hope that similar to the number 2 pick overall in last year's draft, he replicates that, wins Rookie of the Year and offensively and helps this team, overachieve like CJ Stroud did a season ago for his Houston Texans. That said, we don't play in the same division that the Texans played in last year. Our division isn't up for grabs. It isn't trash. You expect Philadelphia, and at a bare minimum, Philadelphia to be good. Dallas is probably still going to be good, although I think people think there's varying degrees of what the Cowboys could potentially be this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a step back, but whether they do or not, it's still a tough division regardless. This division is. So there's that. And then there's just a lot of unknowns. And that's ultimately where I want to focus my attention, is that there's so many unknowns, so many variables that exist here that you can't, I don't care how long you've been a fan of this team. I don't care how, closely you've been following them this offseason, what kind of minute details you've honed in on this offseason. You can't know what this roster is going to look like, number one, right now. And number two, how it's going to perform. You don't know what Joe Witt Jr. is going to do as a defensive coordinator, although I'm bullish on this defense. Him and Dan Quinn, you can't tell me nothing about this defense, even though we're missing pieces and parts that are ultimately going to be necessary for the type of results that I'm looking for to exist. Somebody's going to have to step up in the secondary, right? Specifically cornerback position or two. But we don't know what the defense is going to do. I'm bullish on the defense, but I'm not telling you you need to be, right? Just because I am. I'm bullish on this defense. Offensively, now that's a different story. I don't know what the hell to expect. Don't know what to expect out of Jaden Daniels. Don't know what to expect out of these receivers. Don't know what to expect out of Cliff Kingsbury. Don't know what to expect out of this offensive line. And that's probably the most important thing on the offensive side is the offensive line. Hell, we don't even know who's starting on the left side of the offensive line. I think we already figured out from center over to the right side, that's pretty much intact at this point. What we're going to do at left guard, there's a guy penciled in there. Do you want to write him in pen yet? Nah, not yet. And what we're going to do at left tackle, nobody knows. Nobody knows. So a lot of question marks there. We don't even have a damn place kicker yet. That's like something we shouldn't even be having. Like, Brandon McManus, F you, okay? The fact that we're sitting here, the day before training camp, and I'm having a conversation about not really even knowing who our place kicker is going to be this year, we shouldn't be having this conversation. This is so Washington Commanders-esque. Did you see our old friend D-Hop just got the, second highest paid kicker contract in the league or something like that? Did you guys see that for the Browns? He was really good. I know y'all peep game because this is one thing we do really well as a fan base. Boy, we know how to stalk guys after they leave here, right? Because when you're bad, you want to feel like it's not you, right? Like, no, okay. He sucks with everybody, right? Now, that's just not an us thing, right? No, it's an us thing. But this is what we do with kickers, though. And I always say with these kickers, they were released at the right time. Like, the only one I thought we gave up on too soon was Graham Gano. And he had his struggles here too. I can't act as if he wasn't missing kicks here and they didn't have a reason to move on. I just thought they did it a little bit prematurely. That was all. But every kicker that is moved on from here goes on to have successful careers elsewhere, right? We've gone down the line of these kickers. Sean Sweezum goes on to have a great career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Graham Gano has been exceptional at various stops, including Carolina and the Giants. And obviously Dustin Hopkins now, with the Cleveland Browns. And look, it is what it is. We don't even know what the hell our kicking situation is going to look like. So when I tell you that this team is an enigma, it truly is an enigma. We have no idea what to expect from any units on this team, including special teams, where we're not even sure who's going to be our place kicker this season. So not that that's a bad thing. We may end up being like Dallas last year with Brandon Aubrey, and finding ourselves a diamond in the rough in Ramiz Ahmed. But I wouldn't bank on that. Bottom line is, this team could be really good in this first year because sometimes you get an unexpected spark from a first-year head coach, a new program, this boost because there's this elevation of feeling like there's real change being made. And with this brotherhood that DQ speaks of and this camaraderie that he's promoting and this new sense of belief that's in that building that's permeating those walls, sure, you could see what happened to the Giants year one with Brian Daboll, right? We were calling the Giants the worst team in football potentially. That we made jokes on the NFC East Super Friends, and we were killing the Giants. And Giants won 9 games that year and made it to the playoffs. 9-7-1 they went. Made it to the playoffs and won a playoff game with Daniel Jones at quarterback. So shit happens in year one when you get a brand new operation. You can get a boost, right? As we saw with the case of the Giants, it's a temporary one. You don't take advantage of it. We got a temporary boost here in Washington with Ron Rivera in year one, 7-9. But in a bad division, it was good enough for first place. But, you know, coming from where we were the year before when we had won 3 games, 7 was a lot. It was a pretty good season, right? But all jokes aside, nobody has any clue of what to expect from Washington. Nobody. Vegas has us at 6.5. I think most of us think the number 7. So a lot of us are pressing that over button. But I know a lot of people that are hitting that under button. Like 7 wins? Hell no. Give me the under on that. Give me the under. They definitely not winning 7 games. I love the fact that nobody knows anything about this team. Because you got a rookie quarterback who could burst onto the scene and shatter all types of narratives. Because that's the one thing you could put us in the box with last year, the year before that, the year before that. You're not any good because your quarterback is ... You fill in the blank. Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, Sam Howell, which I thought was a false narrative. But it's easy to put a 5th round pick in a box. We heard what Logan Paulson said about being undrafted, right? And the stigma that carries. No different. It's almost, there's little difference being a 5th round pick. The only difference is we drafted you. We actually spent a draft pick on you. We thought you were worthy of a selection, whereas if you go undrafted, you weren't, right? You're still a late round pick. People still don't view you as a guy that's going to be a game changer as a quarterback, especially in the 5th round. So it was easy to look down at Washington the last 3 years in particular, with your quarterback situation being what it was. Fitzpatrick / Heineke, Wentz, and then Howell, and say, y'all ain't shit. And y'all ain't going to be shit. Hard to say that when you got a rookie quarterback who just came off of winning the Heisman Trophy and you're not quite sure if he's going to how he's going to transition to the NFL. If he picks right up where he left off at LSU, oh shit, the league done messed up. If there are growing pains and he struggles, all right, doesn't mean he won't be good, but might take y'all a little while to get where y'all trying to go. Long story short, I love the position that we're in because, one, nobody's paying attention to us. And they shouldn't be. But just because they're not paying attention to us doesn't mean we can't go out here and inflict pain and punishment and do damage. And if teams aren't careful, you look up, you check the scoreboard, you check the standings, and you're like, wait a minute, what is Washington doing here? By that time, it's too late. And we're here, and we're looking to crash the party now. So I'm telling you, the start to the season is going to be what tells me what I can expect from this team. Because I expect this team with this staff to get better as the season moves on. Unlike Rivera coach teams that would start slow, get hot in the middle of the season, and then fizzle late. I expect us, this group, I can't tell you that they're going to start slow. I just expect them to continue to get better as the season progresses. That's what I expect from this group, based off of the coaching staff and how I expect them to be able to continue to get the most out of these players as the season continues to move forward. Guys are going to get more comfortable in their roles and what they're being asked to do. And they're going to get better and better and better. So if you can get off to a fast start, and you know, I think week 3 is going to be huge. From me, from a confidence standpoint, going into Cincinnati on a Monday night and seeing how Washington plays in that environment, and I think they're going to play well. Again, I only say that, not even have the confidence to say that, because I think the defense is going to be good. And that's going to give you a shot in situations like that. You don't play good defense in situations like that, you're going to get your doors blown off, which was the problem with all the teams we've had over the last, 12 to 15 years. Is defensively, we weren't good enough to go into environments like that and slow that type of opposition down consistently. These were kamikaze missions in most seasons where we were going up against opponents with the type of firepower the Cincinnati Bengals will have, assuming health, with the quarterback that they have in tow. This group, I think, is going to be different, because I think defensively, they're not going to be afraid. They're not going to back down, and they're going to go in there and make their presence felt. Will it be good enough from an offensive standpoint? Because Cincinnati's defense is actually really good too. And we have a young quarterback, and that's where the difference may ultimately be in that game. But I'm going to be intrigued by the start to the season, because you got Tampa and the Giants, and you could get off to a 2-0 start. And again, not to disrespect Tampa Bay, not to disrespect the Giants. We haven't beaten them in 2 years. So no disrespect meant to either one of those teams, But seeing how those 2 games go to start the season off, and I know we started 2-0 last year, and it didn't mean much as shit, but it was the same thing last year, right? You had a chance to start 2-0, and we did. And then week 3 was the test, right? We said the same thing last year. You're going to get tested in week 3. How are you going to fare? We got our asses kicked in week 3. Teeth kicked in. That was a sign of things to come. We didn't know it at the time, because we bounced back the following week. Fell short. But I really think that this team, because of the fact that nobody's really checking for us, there's going to be this kind of, oh, it's Washington. That's cool. It's cute. I remember doing that to Houston last year. Oh, the Texans are over 500 6 weeks in. Oh, that's nice. It's cute. Oh, Texans are over 500 10 weeks in. Oh, that's nice. Texans at 500 14 weeks in? Wait a minute. What the hell's going on here? Texans fighting for a playoff spot in week 18? Are you serious right now? So, yeah. I think that's going to make us a pretty dangerous team. We got nothing to lose. there's going to be a section of the fan base that doesn't see it that way. They're like, hey, no. Sick of losing, bro. They need to go out there and win 10, 11 games this year. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And you know that. You may not want to hear that. That's not how any of this works. So my hope is that this team prepares their asses off, which I don't doubt that they're going to do. Prepares their ass off to compete at a high level. They go into this season guns a-blazing. That identity that we heard DQ talk about, they establish very early on in the season, I may add. The faster they establish that identity, the faster we can get to winning games and maybe even beating some teams we have zero chance of beating. Or at least we shouldn't be. Right? You establish that identity. You start playing the way that they played in Dallas, playing fast, playing physical. Also, can't have those mental lapses. That's what they had in that Green Bay game at the end. That's all Cowboys fans want to talk about. But there weren't very many games of that happening against the Cowboys. They happened, but those weren't consistently happening. You start minimizing mistakes. You play fast. You play physical. Those turnovers are going to start to compile and amass. And when those opportunities do, guys have to catch the ball, got to recover those fumbles. And if they are doing those things, look out. We got a shot, right? Nobody knows what to expect from us. And it's that coupled with a young quarterback, which can change everything. We saw it with the Texans last year. You see it all the time in this league. You throw a young quarterback in there, and he has some magic early on in his career, and it can change everything. We've seen it firsthand here in Washington ourselves and experienced it, right? You throw what the defense can be, potentially. Look, understand, we've been one of the worst defenses in the NFL the last 3 years, 2 out of 3 years. And even when we were good, we weren't really that good. Okay. It felt like a mirage. We're going to upgrade defensively significantly this year. And even if it's not as good as I think, let's say you're 18th in the league. We were 32nd in the league defensively last year, dead last. If you're 18th, you almost improved by 50% in terms of your defensive rate. If you go from 32nd to 18th, you almost improved by 50%. So again, when I tell you that we're going to be better defensively, we're going to be better defensively. How much better are we offensively? Can our special teams help us, not hurt us? A lot of questions, not a lot of answers, but I think that's what makes us such an interesting team going into this season. I'm excited. Let's get to the comment section real quick and get you guys out of here. Got a feeling I'm going to need another bottle of water. Jay Willard, been a member for 34 months. My God, Jay Willie. Right, so Lou, from here on out, football news is real football news. Everything counts from here on out and everything matters. Isn't that beautiful, Jay? No more making up shit to talk about. No more talking about, off-season drama. Is Brandon Ayuk going to get traded here? All that stupid shit. It doesn't matter. Now we talk about things that we can stack on top of each other. As you just said, everything matters. We might not be taking score right now, right? But we keeping track of what's going on in practice. And we stacking good days on top of good days. And we looking at bad days and hoping that there's growth and learning, teaching tools from these bad days. I think when you get to training camp, it's almost like a place of refuge, excuse me, for fans, where you go, whew, all right, deep exhale. We made it. Now let's talk about some real football, right? Enough of that other bullshit. Let's talk about the real stuff. We're not quite there yet because we're not talking about real games, real action. But this is as close as we're going to get before we get there. And this is for part of the process. You know, we heard DQ talk about the process and not cutting any corners, not rushing the process. This is a part of the process. This is the part of the process you can get behind right here, training camp. Love it, man. Love it, Jay. I'm right there with you. Ralph, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Ralph. Right. So what's up, Louie? What's going on, Ralph? My son, he's 4 years old. He watches your show with me. Every time you say double up, he screams out, LOL. I love it. Teaching up the young youth of America from a young, early age. I love it. Love it. Oh, man. Just don't let them do the thrust with it. You know, don't let them do the pelvic thrust with the But yeah, I love that, man. Tell your son I said what's up, man. And get you a little double up. That one's for your son, Ralph. That one's for your son. Ed B. Also been a member for 34 months. So it's a number of y'all getting close to that 3-year anniversary. We got to do something special for y'all. Hit that three-year anniversary mark. Add some love, man. Add B some love. We talking about identity. Identity. Raise hell. Identity. Isn't that beautiful? We talking about identity. It's a beautiful thing. For a long time, we might as well have been Jane Doe. Because you couldn't ID us. We were John Does. Who the hell knew what we were doing, what we stood for? You don't stand for something, you fall for anything. Well, we were falling all over our damn selves. Don't worry. We finna have an identity now. This shit don't go well. At a bare minimum, at least we'll be able to identify the body at the morgue. And you know what? Even if we don't get the job done, at least we know what it's supposed to look like. And we can say, hey, those boys went down fighting. You know, there were a lot of losses last year. And some hurt worse than others. Some left you feeling embarrassed and left a nasty feeling. But the 2 Eagles losses last year, the Seattle Seahawks loss, those were gut-wrenching losses. But at least you felt like, man, if we play like that every week, the outcome might not be the same every single time. We might end up on the right side of some of those. Because the opponents weren't that good every week. You play like that against Chicago, you think you're going to lose that game? No. You know, you play against the Giants like that both times, you think you're going to lose those games? No. You play against the Jets like that, you think you play against the Rams like that, you think you're going to lose? No. The answer is no. Problem is you didn't play like that every single week. So you didn't give yourself a chance like that. I think it'll be less of that and more of us being proud of, win or lose, the product that they put on the field. Now, eventually, you need to win. This ain't Little League. We ain't out here for moral victories. But let's start with the basics. Like, we couldn't even do that last year. Let's just play hard. Let's do that first. Ashmo. Hey. How you doing? Happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Greatly appreciate you. Today is my born day. I appreciate the love. You know what is annoying about my birthday? I didn't realize it till today. I've gotten to an age now where my phone doesn't ring a whole hell of a lot. I don't get a lot of text messages, don't get a lot of phone calls. People hit me up, it's intentional, okay? So, you know, when I'm taking a nap, I get to take a nap. I don't have to worry about my phone ringing, somebody texting me, somebody calling me. My phone rung off the hook today, text messages, people wishing me happy birthday on Facebook and all kinds of stuff, right? Just phone just going off, my watch going off on my wrist. Looking down, I got another birthday wish on Facebook Messenger, and they just all over the place, right? And I'm like, I just want to take a nap. I just want my peace. I think that's the thing I miss on my birthday the most. You know, if you're not gonna have my birthday on a weekend, which it's not, and it's not gonna be on a weekend for a very long time. Okay, it's a Tuesday, so I'm not getting back to the weekend for at least 4 more years. Friday at the earliest. Then just let me have my time. It's not going to happen. From sun up, I'm getting text messages from family members, getting phone calls from friends. It's a lot. I'm happy to be here. I'm not complaining. I'm happy to see another 365. And I hope to see many, many more. And I appreciate all of y'all. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for the love. LT, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Kellen Moore, use Saquon, only injury stops Philly chip. We'll see. We know what Kellen Moore's history is. He wants to throw the football. People are going to try to convince you that Kellen Moore is balanced and he'll run the football. Okay, we'll see. We know what Kellen Moore wants to do. He's going to have to fight his nature. His nature is to throw the football. They didn't pay Saquon all that money not to hand him the rock. So I feel pretty confident that they're going to get back to the core of what they are, which is running the football. Will they be as effective doing that? We'll see. I have no reason to believe that they won't. How good would the defense be? We'll see. A lot of questions. Not a lot of answers right now, but this is the time of year where you get to ask those questions. There is no definitive answer right now, but a Philadelphia Eagles chip is definitively way more than just it's a lot less simple than just if they hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley, we win in the Super Bowl. Your defense was ass-tastic last year. The hell are you talking about, LT? Did you just forget how bad you were defensively last year? You think Vic Fangio magically just going to come in and wave a magic wand and the defense is fixed? Maybe. I mean, that's the same shit that's the same premise I'm going off of with Dan Quinn. I'm just telling you, Vic Fangio ain't had the same results that Dan Quinn has had the last 3 years. That's all I'm telling you about Vic Fangio. I can talk that shit about my guy because the numbers suggest that wherever he goes, this is what happens. Not exactly with Vic these days, but we'll see. We'll see, LT. Ralph, been a member for 1 month. Really appreciate you, Ralph. Who writes, just want to thank you, brother. You are a blessing. I appreciate you. Thank you, Ralph, for your support. And your 4-year-old, man. That was cute. That was dope. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy Chris. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I know I'm gonna need some more water. Give me a second. All right. Whew. Whew. All right. Chris, my guy. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, my guy Chris. Thank you for the support as always. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou, hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. Happy birthday. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed the day. I did. Big shout out to my wife for helping me enjoy the day and relax, get my life together. 2 questions. 1, what are your thoughts on Terry being ranked 97th on the top 100 players list? And number 2, what percentage of defensive snaps will be base versus others? Excuse me. So Terry being ranked on the top 100, I think that is a testament to the hard work he's put in and him finally getting the recognition that I think he deserves. Because by no means was last year a season in which you expected him to garner any type of recognition for his services, because he barely got over 1,000 yards. But I think what people realize is with the dysfunction that was occurred in Washington, with how shit was set up and how things were done, for him to still get 1,000 yards, again, it's a testament to Terry McLaurin and his greatness. And, you know, when you start throwing him in rarefied air with guys like Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs as the only players over the last 4 years to have 75 catches and 1,000 yards in each of the last 4 seasons, then you start to realize, wait a minute, this dude's different. So I, you know, again, I don't put a lot of stock into those lists, but it's always good. It's never a bad thing when your peers acknowledge you as one of the best players in football. And I'll leave it at that. I'm happy for him. Now I want to see him continue to grow and ascend on that list. Right? You all right? You on the list, albeit barely, but you're on it. Now let's see if we can't finally get him some consistency at the most important position and start getting him the amount of targets and the amount of explosive plays and the amounts of yardage, and maybe we can even get him to double-digit touchdowns for once in his career. I don't know if he'll ever be a double-digit touchdown guy in his career, but I damn sure like to see them give him an opportunity to be that. So good for Terry. Question 2, percentage of defensive snaps will be base versus others. So that is strictly dependent upon the opponent. You play your coverages based off of the offensive looks that you get. You're not going to stay in your base. Excuse me. You're not going to stay in your base if a team spreads you out and goes with a 4 wide receiver set. You know, you're not going to stay in your base if a team goes empty, 3 receivers, 1 tight end and a back, but they go empty. Like, you're not going to stay in your base look, right? So you're going to go to base. You're going to be in base off of what the offense is doing, right? So I think because of the opponents that we'll see this year, I think you're more likely to see more base than you would in previous years. Here's why I say that. You're playing Baltimore. What is Baltimore going to do? They're going to run the football. They're going to get in some power formations and some big personnels. You're going to have situations where they come out in some heavy looks, right? 21 personnel, 20, 22 personnel, right? Where they come out, 2 backs, a tight end, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and then what's coming, right? So you're playing against a team like that. You're playing against Cleveland. They're going to run the football. So you're going to be in your base personnel when you're playing against teams a little bit more than normal that like to run the football. So knowing that, I think Carolina's going to try to run it a little bit more. If you paid attention to what they did in Tampa Bay last year with their head coach and how even though Tampa wasn't good at running the ball, he didn't stop. I think they're going to run it a little bit. So you might see, a little bit more base against Carolina, so forth and so forth. It's enough of those teams. The Steelers are going to run the ball. That's the kind of division that they have. So just based off of the divisions that we'll be playing against, some of the teams we'll be playing against, I think it's a safe assumption to say that we'll be seeing some teams that like to run the football. And if we can't stop the run effectively, we could be in some trouble. But you'll see a little bit more base, but you're still going to see, other packages and personnel groupings more so than base. I'd say my guess is in a normal season, you probably see base 30 to 35% of the time. And you be in your, different looks from a package perspective, 65, 70% of the time. I think this year it's going to be a little bit less. I think you're going to see more base, a little bit less of that because of the teams we playing against. So I say instead of it being 30 to 35%, it'll be 40 to 45% base this year. And, 55 to 60%, different personnel packaging and groupings. Nickel and that sort of thing. But it's all dependent on opponent. Really, it is. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Hey, Lou. 2 questions. 1, do you think this is Tressway's last year with the team, with him being an unrestricted free agent after this season? And 2, what do you need to see from B. Coleman specifically to know he can be the long-term left tackle, and why? Do I think this is Tress's last season? I think it is strictly based off of his performance. Tress is an older punter, but by no means does age make a punter, a guy that you have to get rid of and replace with a younger one. If he's still kicking the hell out of the football, if he's still doing a great job of giving you hang time, if he's still pinning opponents inside their 20, inside their 15, inside their 10, I think he'll be back. Like, he's not a guy they're itching to get rid of. Like, nobody's like, hey, we got to get this punter out of here and get our own punter in here. Like, Bill Belichick was big on that because he liked left-footed punters. So if he came into a situation and you didn't have a left-footed punter and he could get him a left-footed punter, he'd want to do that. Tressway is really good. And if Tress is still kicking it well, still pinning opponents inside inside their 20, doing a good job of killing some, kicks inside the 10, you guys letting it bounce and they're getting down there and downing it inside the 5. He has a really strong season. I see no reason why you don't bring him back. No reason whatsoever. But if his play declines a bit, and there were times last year, I know we love Tress, and I know a lot of you are staunch Tressway supporters, but there was times last year, especially early. I thought he got better as the season wore on. But early in the season last year, Tress was not good. He was not good. And we could blame it on Cheese. You could blame it on whatever you want. He was not good. But boy, not only is he a damn good punter, Tress has proven his weight in his worth in gold, platinum, as a holder. This man was playing shortstop, catcher, first base, all types of shit back there last year. Picking shit, going up, putting it down, left, right, scooping it off the turf, getting that shit down. If nothing else, he's proven the ability to be able to overcome a poor snap. So he has some worth. But this could be his last year, but if he performs well, I don't see why it would be. It's going to strictly come down to his performance. And even then, it'll come down to his performance because they could just not sign him and draft a guy, right? So if he performs well, they'll bring him back. I feel almost 100% certain about that. What do I need to see from Brandon Coleman to feel like he's the guy? Look, honestly, it's not what I think. Because clearly that's not the case. If it were, Cornelius Lucas would have been starting last year at, right tackle. And we would have did some shifting around the offensive line last year. So it's not up to me, but I can tell you this. This is what I'm looking for from Brandon Coleman in the preseason. Because I right now, I trust Logan Paulson. Chris Cooley was the first one to tell us, and Chris is not out there. He just went off of the tape. Logan is out there. Now, again, they don't have pads on, and Logan made sure he told us, I want to put out this disclaimer. The pads could come on, and this dude could turn into an animal. And I've seen guys, the light bulb come on for dudes when the pads come on, and he's a totally different dude, and he's ready to help you right now. He says, I just don't see that going into camp. Doesn't mean it won't happen. I just don't see it. So, with that said, I expect him to play quite a bit because I don't think he's going to start. I think they're going to give Trent Scott and Cole the first cracks at this, with Cole being the guy to get the real first opportunity. But Coleman, what I need to see from him is consistency, because I know the athleticism is there. I was not pleased I seen, clips in practice and things of that nature of him at the Senior Bowl. And I see him getting pushed around. Guys really driving him back into the lap of the quarterback. I didn't like that shit. So from a fundamental standpoint, I'd like to see him narrow that base a bit. I think his base is a little too wide. Narrow that base. Get his punches, his handwork, get that synced up with his feet. Become more technically sound. He's not a super tall tackle or offensive lineman. So, like with Cornelius Lucas, who's like 6'8", you got to worry about, can this dude bend, right? Because he's so tall. He's 6'4". Brandon Coleman's 6'4". So he's not a super tall guy. So, you shouldn't have issues with bending at the waist. You should be bending at your knees. You should be able to move side to side, laterally, agility-wise. And then I need you to play with power, right? Physicality. I want to see consistency from him. Rep after rep after rep. And if you out here playing against second and third teamers, which he should be, I need you to dominate. I don't want to see the second and third teamers getting the best of you. Putting you on your ass, putting pressure on the quarterback, you having to commit holding penalties, things of that nature. I want to see you play at a level that suggests I'm better than these dudes. I might not be starting, but I'm better than the dudes I'm playing against right now. They're not on my level. That's what I need to see in the preseason. You know what my prerequisite is, right? I talk about this during the draft process. Okay, so what? You didn't go to a Power 5. All right? So what? You didn't go to a D1 school. They'll still find you, right? The only thing you can control is what you can control, which is dominate whomever they put in front of you. Dominate the competition. Okay, so you play at a lesser level, well, dominate then. Show them that I'm better than all of y'all and I don't belong here. I should be playing at a higher level. Dominate them. Same thing applies for the preseason. So just like it's no different in NBA Summer League. If I send you the NBA Summer League as an NBA player, you were on my roster last year, you played in games last year, you are an NBA player, and you're playing against NBA hopefuls, guys that just got drafted, guys that are in the G League, guys that are trying to get an opportunity to stick on an NBA roster, you supposed to crush these dudes, wipe the floor with their ass. You supposed to make it look like, hey, bro, I really don't belong here. I'm varsity chump UJV. That's what I want him to make it look like. Then I'll know, okay, we might have something here. We might be working with something. So, Swaggy P, been a member for 21 months, almost getting to that 2-year, threshold. Really appreciate you, Swaggy. Really appreciate you, Swaggy P, who writes, "Happy birthday, Lou. Also hope that, that cough doesn't turn bad. I'll tell you this much. It was way worse over the weekend. I told y'all a lot of shit happened over this weekend and not all of it good. I'm going to leave that for my podcast, though. I'll tell you about that on my podcast. So I'll be all right. But I know this much. It's kicking my ass right now. I did a MusicHead stream earlier today, and I was not having this issue. So I don't know what the hell just happened. And why all of a sudden now my throat want to be extra scratchy. But it's definitely like, I got something for your ass. It's doing me in right now. I ain't gonna even front. C-Trail, been a member for 8 months. Really appreciate you. My guy C-Trail writes, "Happy birthday, Lou. Appreciate it, C. Appreciate it. Mine is Friday. Cheers to more." You know what? Happy early birthday to you, my friend. Leos, you know we got to stick together, right? I talk about left-handers all the time and how we got to stick together. Leos, we got to stick together too, man. We in this thing together, man. So cheers to you and your birthday. From a Leo to another. May you see many, many more, my friend. Appreciate you. Excuse me. Daily Grind. Been a member for 34 months. Daily Grind. Almost at that 3-year mark. Happy born day, brethren. 757. You know what it is, man. Appreciate you. Good looking out, man. Rocky D. Been a member for 19 months. Really appreciate you. Rocky writes, what is your pet peeve when it comes to training camp coverage? I mean, there are a lot of them. At this point, though, I've gotten over a lot of that stuff. I used to not be like, my biggest pet peeve is people overreacting to interceptions. You know, your quarterback's going to throw interceptions at camp. Oh, the offense had another bad day. Oh my God, what does that say about the offense? Or, you know, vice versa. But if the oh my God, the quarterback threw 3 interceptions today, you know, he's trash. And, you know, that's my biggest pet peeve at training camp. But I think the overall biggest pet peeve is just the overall coverage of training camp. But I'm a part of that. So you got to give the people what they want. But I think just training camp in general, there's an overreaction to training camp now that exists that didn't exist 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, right? The coverage of training camp is crazy. It did not used to be like this. You know, a quarterback could throw 90 picks at practice in one day, and and nobody, unless you were there, nobody would know about it. You know, now if he throws 1 interception, oh my God, can't believe he threw a pick. And mistakes are going to happen. Lots of mistakes are going to happen in his rookie season. Trust me, he's not going to be perfect this year. So, you know, there's a lot of pet peeves with training camp, but at the end of the day, we're all finked up at this point, and I'm included. I'm guilty as charged. I'm going to be here reporting on training camp every day and, you know, telling you what I heard from somebody else, reading from somewhere, you know, this happened, that happened, you know, listening to all those who were there and getting bits and pieces and kind of bringing it all to one place so we can discuss. It's just the nature of the beast now. We get play-by-play descriptions, or we get, you know, when the media is out there, Jaden Daniels just went 4 of 6 on, you know, on the 2-minute drill, including, you know, 2 beautiful strikes to Terry McLaurin and then a touchdown pass. Like, we get that kind of shit, like blow by blow. And it's like, do we really need that for training camp? But people want it. People obsess over that stuff. So, yeah, it's a lot. Darnell Kelly, been a member for 34 months. My guy, DK. Writes, we will be nice this year. Uh-oh. A better roster and better coaching. We won 4 games last year with an ass roster and a rec league coaching. If you coach, we would have gotten 4. Hey, wait a minute. So you calling me a rec league coach? Nah, I'm playing. We were an 8-win team easy. I wouldn't say easy, but we should have been somewhere in that department last year if we were properly coached and prepared. I struggle with this, Darnell, with your logic here on this. Are we a better roster? Probably. Significantly better? Nah, not really. Like, our roster isn't terrible. It's better than it was last year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. How much better? We'll find out. We'll find out. I'd like to think it is a significantly better roster, but we can't say that right now. Right now, is it better? Yes. How much? Don't know. I think it's, like you, much better. But I'm not willing to say that. You are. I'm not. Not yet, at least. Here's what you're not taking into account. Yes, we are going to be much better coached. You are spot on about that. We're not playing the same schedule we played last year. Okay? You're not playing Atlanta and New England and Arizona. You are playing Arizona, actually, but with this time with Kyler Murray, not without. Okay. You're not playing. I think the Giants are going to be better this year than they were last year. Giants were ass last year, and we should have swept them, and instead they swept us, which is a travesty. Okay, the Giants, I think, are going to be better than people think. People are shitting on the Giants. I don't think the Giants are going to be a playoff team or anything like that. I don't think they're going to do what they did 2 years ago when they shocked everybody and made the playoffs. But I think a lot of people are just assuming Daniel Jones is ass, which he is, and that they're going to end up with a top 5 pick. I don't see that happening. They got to bottom out to get into that position to get a quarterback. I'd like to help them by sweeping them, doing our part. Because at this point, we got ours. I'm no longer in the business of, let me stop the Giants, because we were both after the same prize. Now we got ours. So now I don't worry about the Giants. Let them worry about being trash. Let the losers worry about losing, right? I'm trying to smoke their ass twice. And if they need a quarterback, I want to help them. I don't give a shit about who they select or what they do or where they. Let me get my 2 off. Let me get my 2 dubs off. That's what I'm trying to do. But we didn't play the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Browns last year. Like, that makes the schedule infinitely harder than it was last year. When you played the Jets, who were awful, the Patriots, who were awful, the Dolphins, and the Bills, right? 50% of that division was ass last year. The AFC North is all good. 3 out of the 4 teams made it to the playoffs, and the one team that didn't make it, made it last year, is getting their quarterback back. So you got to look at the schedule too. Yeah, we play Carolina this year, and we play Arizona, and you get some of those games in there. But I'm just telling you, the schedule is a little bit tougher. It's a doable schedule. We went through it before, and we're going to go through it again. It's a doable schedule. It's not impossible, but to definitively say we're going to be nice right now, it's a bold statement on your part. And it's easy to make bold statements right now because nobody's holding you to anything right now. Everybody can talk crazy right now, talk cold hard cash right now. Who's stopping you? What's stopping you? If you're right, you get to come back and say, Louie, I told you. If you're wrong, you ain't going to come back and say, damn, I was wrong. So it's easy to talk crazy right now. You don't think you're talking crazy. That's the thing. Is most fans don't think when they say, like, hey, we about to win 11 games, like, they dead ass. They not talking crazy in their mind. That's how they feel. Oh, word? All right. We're going to see. I don't disagree with you that if the team was better coached last year, you could have easily won 8 games because you should have beaten Chicago. You should have beaten Philadelphia at least one of those 2 times, and you should have swept the Giants last year. No excuse not to have those games go differently than the way that they did. C-Trill. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My man C writes, Terry at 97, but Garrett at 72. Shaking my head, the disrespect. As in Garrett Wilson? And? Am I supposed to be agreeing with your your disbelief in the disrespect of Terry? Am I supposed to be like, yeah, that's crazy? Because I'm not. I keep telling y'all Garrett Wilson is better than Terry McLaurin. Why is this hard to believe? Why is this a hard premise to understand? Like, I don't understand why y'all don't understand that. We had this conversation like 5 months ago when we did the ranking of the wide receivers. And I asked y'all straight up, would y'all put Garrett Wilson ahead of Terry McLaurin? And most of y'all told me no. And I was like, what? It was like me and like maybe 3 or 4 other people was like, y'all tripping. I'm putting Garrett Wilson ahead of Terry. Y'all tripping. Tripping. This is the problem. I think this is the problem for a lot of y'all. Y'all don't watch a lot of these other teams and these players. So y'all think y'all don't understand how good some of these other players are. That's what it boils down to. Garrett Wilson is a dog. Not that Terry's not. But it's levels to the bark and the bite. But take it for what it's worth. We don't got to argue about it. The league has spoken. Okay? Sometimes you just got to know when to take your damn chips and get the hell off the goddamn table. Okay? Cash them bitches out. They gave you 97. Take your goddamn chips and get the hell out of here. Or you crap out. All right? I ain't complaining. Anyway, I digress. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Jamal writes, happy born day, Lou. Appreciate it. Blessings to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I think punt returner / kick returner will have a major impact this year. Do you think they will actually use Luke? And what undrafted running back do you think might make the roster to help in special teams? I too do believe that there could be a massive role. I've already said if I were constructing a roster, I told this to John Keim, I would devote a roster spot to a specialist. Like, knowing what the rules are going to be this year, I would have sought out a guy like Cordero Patterson. Like, he would have been a high priority for me in free agency, knowing he was available. He went to the Steelers. That's a steal. Knowing what the rules are going to be. And we keep hearing coaches talk about how this kickoff rule could end up being more like a running play. Well, Cordero Patterson also plays running back. So you got the best of both worlds. He can return it if it's like a normal kickoff. He can return it if it's like a running play. He's a beast. You can't tackle this dude with arm tackles. He's fast as shit. Like, this is set up perfectly for him. I would have taken guys that had that ability. And I think in the future, teams may, after seeing how the play actually works out, teams may start to do that. I would have been proactive with it this year. But will they use Luke? Logan Paulson brought that up on the channel and said, yeah, I think they might actually use Luke as a return man. If that's the case, I'm intrigued. I'm interested. I told you already Michael Wiley, the kid out of Arizona, is the most intriguing of the undrafted running backs. If they were looking to keep one, to bring in a skill set, to give them something that they already have in Austin Eckler, but if Eckler goes down, you don't have another guy on the roster that can do the things Eckler does. Don't know about Wiley stepping in and being a great pass protector right now, but he can do all the other stuff. He'd be interesting. Wiley, Michael Wiley. That's the one. He's going to be the guy that I'll be keeping an eye on in the preseason if there's one back. I'm going to be shocked if it's the Jones kid out of USC. I'd be shocked. It's Michael Wiley for me out of Arizona. Derek Williams, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Derek writes, Lou, my boy, you know I'm a lurker and always in the background, even when I can't catch a live. Respect from a fellow lurker. Respect. Okay. Glad to see you coming out from the shadows of the darkness into the light, even if only for a brief moment. It's good to see you. Question: if we keep 5 cornerbacks, who's your 5th guy? That's a great question. And we'll have more insight, obviously, as we get into camp, who's making plays. And then we get into the preseason, right? These joint practices and then ultimately into the preseason. But right now, you got to assume they're going to keep 5. They don't have to, but you'd like to assume that they're going to keep 5. So let's just get the known quantities out of the way. Manuel Forbes Jr., Benjamin St. Juice, Mikey Sanger still, Michael Davis. That's 4, right? These are 4 guys you know are making the roster. If they keep a 5th guy and they're keeping a 5th guy, it's just who's that? I'm going to go with one of the guys they signed in free agency. My guess right now is Noah Igbenogany, corner that they signed from Dallas, plays special teams. Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. know him. If not him, James Pierre, another guy they signed in free agency from the Pittsburgh Steelers, another core special teamer that could play in a pinch the cornerback position. So that's my guess. They didn't bring those guys in here for nothing. They brought them in here to compete. Don't count out any of the back-end cornerback roster guys from a season ago. They still have a shot, but it's a long one because, again, this group didn't bring those guys here, and they did bring in Noah Igbenogany. They did bring in James Pierre. So all those guys that were here last year are going to have to, prove without a shadow of a doubt that they're better than the guys that they brought in here. It's not just good enough to prove that they can play, because you can play on my practice squad. You making this team, you got to prove that you're better than Noah Igbenogany and James Pierre, because I brought those guys in here specifically with the intent to compete and for one of them to make the roster. So I'm going to say Noah Igbenogany is the choice. He was the first one that they brought in here, and he's a known commodity. He's a known commodity. They know him. They know what he can and what he can't do, and sometimes there's comfort in knowing what a player is capable of. So I think his special teams prowess and them being comfortable with him gives him the leg up on the rest of those corners. So I'd put him as the 5th corner right now. Gilberto Martinez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Gilberto writes, I think 7 and 9 is very realistic, or 7 and 10. What are the major factors you think that will contribute to this squad achieving 7 wins and succumbing to the 9 defeats or 10 defeats, right? So honestly, I've said this already. I think a number of losses will come off strictly off of youth, inexperience, and the inability to close out opponents or win games. Like one of the things Quinn talked about, DQ talked about, was playing winning football at critical junctures, at critical moments of the game. Last 2 minutes of the half, last 2 minutes of the game, et cetera, et cetera. Situationally, getting things right. I think you're going to just see a team that, while littered with veterans, they did a really good job of bringing in a bunch of veterans and stuff, still a young team. A relatively, even the veterans like a Nick Allegretti, he's young because he's a starter. He's never started. He's never gone into a season as the starter. We might be able to say the same thing for Cornelius Lucas, who might ultimately be the starter, or Trent Scott, who may ultimately be the starter for this team at left tackle. Luke McCaffrey might be your third receiver. It's a rookie, right? Again, he could be the fourth or fifth receiver for all we know, but this is going to be a relatively young team. Johnny Newton is going to be getting a ton of snaps. You're going to probably be playing Mikey Samer still a ton in nickel. Quan Martin's going to see the field quite a bit. It's a second-year safety. Manuel Forbes is a second-year corner. You get where I'm going. This is still a relatively young team. So a lot of the guys that are playing and we're relying on a lot of snaps, fourth, fifth-year guys, first, second-year guys, even the older guys, sixth, seventh-year guys. I mean, those are veterans in the league. You 5, 6 years you've been in the league. That's good. That's a good amount of time, but still, everything is new to these guys because it's a brand new scheme for everybody for the most part, except for the guys that came over from Dallas with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. on the defensive side, and Zach Ertz on offense. That's about it, right? So it's pretty much new for everybody. So they're going to be mistakes. And sometimes mistakes are going to happen at the most. Not that mistakes, anytime you make a mistake is okay, but you can overcome a mistake on the first play of the game, the first possession of the game, even the first half of the game. But you make that same mistake in the third or the fourth quarter, that might cost you the ball game. Now it's too late to overcome it. I see this team making some mistakes late in ball games, like we did back in 2022 when we lost some games. Like when we lost to Minnesota, we dominated that game and then imploded in the fourth quarter. We should have beat the Titans in 2022. Got all the way down to the 2-yard line and couldn't put the ball in the end zone, right? Through a game-clinching pick, right? Like, I think this team is going to suffer some of those types of defeats. Maybe not as dramatic as the Titans loss, or even dramatic as the Vikings loss. Remember, we held them to a field goal, and we're going to get the ball back, and then Captain Insano illegally rushes, hits the center, and they get the 15-yard, unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Bada. Now they can run out the clock, kick a walk-off field goal, and we lose. So, yeah, I think you're going to have some mistakes, essentially, that cost us games. You're going to have some plays that go our way, some things we do well that are going to help us win some games. And I think John Keim said this, and I agree with him. You want to see this team continue to get better and progress as the season goes along and win a game or two that they shouldn't win in year one. And there are going to be some opportunities that will be ripe for them to do that. Week 3 against Cincinnati, it's early though. Later on in the season, you get the Steelers, Ravens, even though I think that's going to be relatively early, but somewhere in there, you get the Ravens. Like, there are going to be some games on the schedule that are going to give you a chance to beat a team that you probably shouldn't beat. Where are you at? How good is Dallas? How good is Philadelphia? You get both of them late in the season. You don't get Dallas for the first time till week 12 again. And then week 18 to finish up. How good are you? How good are they? We'll know by the time we get there. If they're good, then it's another measuring stick game, right? So I think we'll figure out some things. But a lot of our losses will be caused by youth and inexperience. That's what I think. Not undisciplined behavior or anything. Just simply, you got a young quarterback and he's going to make some mistakes. You got an offensive line that's young, and not young in necessarily in years, just young in experience as starters. Then you still got Andrew Wiley at right tackle. That doesn't help. So, man, we'll see, right? We'll see. Joshua Myrick, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, happy G-Day, Lou. Appreciate you. Keep holding it down. More life. More life. DMV Chef P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, happy birthday, Lou. Appreciate you. So there's been talk of Luke playing outside. What are your thoughts on that? And who would you put in the slot, Terry or Jahan? Well, here's the thing. Every receiver should be trained to play multiple positions. The X, the Z, and the slot. So I, myself, personally, would have no issues with Luke playing outside. He played outside and inside at Rice. So he can do both. Terry showed the ability over the last 2 years in particular to be able to move around the formation. Early in his career, he was more of an outside receiver, and they didn't want to overwhelm him. And as his career continued to progress, he started to become more comfortable moving around the formation. Jahan is probably the more natural slot of the three. Guy that you can move inside and you feel good about his quickness inside. Because in order to win on the inside, you need to have that quickness. Now, depending on what kind of routes you have your guy running from the slot, toughness may also need to be another attribute. That's not something that Jahan necessarily specializes in. You don't want him taking shots. Whereas we've seen Luke, if you watched him at Rice, he's a tough son of a bitch. So you can run him all over the place. And Luke isn't afraid to go over the middle, go into traffic, go get football, take a shot, keep on, ticking. So there's a little bit of that. But if you can keep Jahan out of harm's way, he's the more natural of the three inside. So I just think if you do it correctly, it should be interchangeable. Jahan should be able to go inside. Jahan should be able to go outside. Luke should be able to go inside. Luke should be able to go outside. Terry should be able to go inside. Terry should be able to go outside. Shouldn't matter. We shouldn't be pigeonholing any of these guys. In year one, it's understandable if you just want to teach Luke slot. That is it. Or outside. That is it. It makes sense if you don't want to overwhelm him in his rookie season. But theoretically speaking, you would like to be able to teach him multiple positions so that in the event that somebody goes down, you can have, Luke step in at anywhere, right? But again, This is why you need a De'Ami Brown. In the event that something happens, De'Ami can learn multiple positions. He's been in the league long enough. You can put that on his plate. So anyway, it'd be Jahan, who would be the most natural to go inside. Anyway, that's the last super chat. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment. Once again, it's on. It's that time again. Y'all know what it is. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about training camp practice. That sounds so sweet, doesn't it? Has this sort of redeeming quality to it. It's a nice ring. We made it. Give yourself a round of applause. You made it through another one of these nasty, murky, dirty off seasons. This one wasn't as bad. This one was pretty clean for the most part. Brandon McManus tried to muck it up a little bit. These damn Brandons, boy, they tried to make it tough on us. Ayuk, McManus, but ultimately we powered through and we made it to the damn finish line. Where's my goddamn award? Where's my damn juice box? My bag of chips, my gold star? Hey, I want a medal. Shit. We all deserve one. We made it. Now let's go have ourselves a season. Anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to enjoy the last 15 minutes of my born day. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. We got some real practice to talk about. Practice? Not a game. Not a game. But practice? Yeah. Y'all post up. Take command. Y'all have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.